Okay, kom ons probeer. Dit is 'n bietjie hard. Almal my hoor, ekskuus, ek wil nie compete nie, maar ek sal seker ongelukkig bietjie moet harder praat. Maar steek net 'n hand op as julle my nie kan hoor nie. My vrou sê gewoonlik ek praat binnensmonds as ek voor mense staan en praat, so ek gaan try praat vanaand. So laat my net weet as julle kan hoor nie. Cornelia, is julle reg agter? Almal reg. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. I mean, we are blessed with the rain. Ons is regtig geseën en ek het nou, Riander het nou net ook gesê hoeveel reën het ons net al gehad in die laaste week. It's unbelievable. En maar nog steeds dankie vir julle wat hier is vanaand, die moeite gedoen het om te kom. Ten spyte van die reën. Ten spyte daarvan dat dit 'n donderdag aand is. En ons as komitee en eintlik vriende met mekaar en vriende van die 7 dame is regtig bevoorreg dat almal so saamwerk met een doel en dit is om te kyk na ons 7 dame en die 7 dame omgewing. I'm going to present most of the meeting tonight in English, so net vir die Engelse kykers, ons het 'n klomp mense wat ook op Facebook inskakel en daar is 'n klomp mense wat ongelukkig ook nie hier is nie. Wat gesê het hulle kom, but I think the weather just forced them away. So thank you for being here tonight with us. I'm really going to be short. The annual general meeting is our most important meeting of the year. But I'll stick to the agenda and I'll keep it as short as possible. I think I would rather have Dr. Henri van Aert in front here. So we're looking forward to her presentation as well. All right. The attendance, everybody written into the attendance registers at the back. I assume everybody did. Thank you for that. Tasha, is there any apologies that we should note? Anything except for all the mails that we have received? Nothing specific? Thank you. Can you just, Cornelia, confirm we are a quorum? We are more than 30 people. That is what our MOI say. Thank you. So the meeting is properly convened. We appreciate that. And again, thank you for everybody being here. Then I just want to finalize the agenda. Like I said, I'm going to be brief. We've already dealt with the attendance. I'm going to have the chairman's report just hereafter. Then we're going to have the financial report that Cornelia is going to present to us. We're going to have the election of directors that Joe Heemstra is going to deal with. And then, like I've mentioned, we will close the meeting and then we'll have Dr. van Aert that's going to do us a presentation. Is there anything else? I'm going to have time for questions and answers right after I close the meeting or just at the end of the meeting. Is there anything else specific that someone wants to add to the agenda now? Nothing? Thank you. Is everybody happy? Appreciate. All right, then I close the agenda, then I can continue. I'm going back to last year. The meeting last year was on the 11th of November 2021, and it was also here. Just by show of hands, did everybody receive the previous minutes of the meeting last year held here? Thank you. I'm quickly going to run just through a few of the highlights. It was pretty much the same as we're going to deal with tonight. We had the previous minutes of the AGM 2020. We had a chairman's report. I also stood here and told you a lot of things. And after that, also Cornelia presented the financials for us. And after that, we had the election of the directors, where the board didn't change much. And we had the appointment of our auditors, which was MRB and Partners, who did an audit report for this year. And yeah, and then we had a presentation of Dr. Lisa Hubert last year. Is there anything that anyone wants to change in the previous minutes, or can we adopt it as a true reflection? Thank you, thank you, thank you, Joe. Thank you. Right. That is in a nutshell as quick as we can go at the moment. So I'm just going to change the presentation at the back, and I'll actually want to deal with a few of the photos that you guys see there. I'm just going to try and do it slow, just again to see how beautiful this little space is that everybody belongs to and everybody to take care of, and all the nice things that is happening in the 7 dams. I think a lot of the things that you see on the pictures now as well is a lot of the activities that we do in 7 dams. Okay, I've dealt with the agenda. That's the agenda we're going to do, and then important, every year I stand here, I just want to again highlight what we are doing. What is 7 dams and what is Friends of the 7 Dams? I think everybody, or most of you know what it is. The Conservancy is on 86 hectares to the north of Bloemfontein. It is actually 4 portions of land, and it's very close, or close proximity to the Free State Botanical Gardens. The land is owned by Mangaung Metro Municipality, and when I say that, we are also owners of Mangaung Metro Municipality, all the public, everybody that's here. But we have took it onto us to look after this piece of land, because it's near and dear to our heart. So we are the custodians. We try and mitigate any negative impact on the land through consultation, negotiation, and even legal processes if required. And we will still have a strong focus in future with Mangaung to the point where we can have a formal agreement, because we aren't formally attached, which is sometimes good and sometimes not as good. But unfortunately, our councillor Boertes are here as well tonight. Unfortunately, politicians isn't always on the right path or the same path as we are. So we are very afraid that even a piece of our land might be sold for others, some other bad reason. So that's why we need to continue with our agreement. I've mentioned actually the agreement now, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview. That is our portion. That is the 4 pieces of land outlined with the black. That is where the 86 hectares is. The 4 portions, as I mentioned. Sorry, I just want to go back quickly. I've dealt with the background of it. I'm just going to give you some feedback on the agreement with the Mangaung. I've mentioned it last year at our previous AGM as well. Fatsohane was tasked, or they actually offered pro bono work to us, that they will help us to draw up an agreement that can be obviously suitable for us as the Friends of 7 Dams Conservancy, but will also be in favour of the municipality when we sign such an agreement. We have received the agreement back from Fatsohane. There's, I call it a draft agreement at the moment. We will surely finalize it in the next few months, and then it will be proposed to Mangaung for signature. The outline of the agreement is just pure that we will take responsibility for the land in the sense that we will look after the land, what we obviously already do, and we will try and establish a 99-year lease agreement within that agreement. I think we're going to still have some battles to fight to get to that point, but I am very positive, and we will push as hard as we can to get that agreement in place for the Friends of Seven Dams. Then the second, I think most important thing, one of the most important things that we are also busy with, we have discussions at the moment with the Environmental Management Group through Mr. Xavier Vermeulen. He's investigating the possibility of formally proclaiming the Conservancy as a protected area. Now, there was a proclamation done back in 1994, actually 1993, at the Department of Tourism and Economic and Environmental Affairs, but seemingly a lot of the files and paperwork of that time was lost by the department, so no one can confirm today that we are a proclaimed conservancy. So we are taking it again back through the formal processes to the point where we then have a protected environment. This is a process of about 2 to 3 years it's still going to take, but we are also positive that we're going to get that done within this period of time. Then I just want to mention, I think if I mention that tonight, we are actually maybe a little or small our SA. There's a new NPC that was just established recently, and I just want to mention it. It's really just a question of support. Our SA is a non-political NPC. It's pretty much like our non-profit company that we have. This NPC has taken on a huge task to get involved with Mangaung on a regular basis. We are focused, our NPC is focused on Seven Dams Conservancy. These guys have went as far as going to look at all business sectors within Mangaung, from conservancies, finance, planning, everything that you can think of that the municipality is, like I say, it's non-political company, but they've taken on a huge task to try and make our city investable as it should be, clean up everything, and they even take part of their job to look after all the green spaces in Mangaung. Our involvement in future, we will inform our members with our future involvement with our SA as well. Membership and membership fees. We still have good growth on our members, and I'm very happy to say tonight that we are in total 1,266 members, with 985 that is paid up members to date for this year. And then we've got a corporate member in Wild Olive Estate, the Wild Olive Estate Owners Association, where plus minus 1,500 people reside. And we think about 10% of that people is using the Conservancy. So that's another 150 adding to our members total of 1,266. It's close to 1,400 to 1,500 people that is dedicated to the Conservancy, but also use the Conservancy regularly during a year at least. And again, I want to thank all our members, everyone that's here tonight, but everyone else that are contributing and taking hands with us to protect our Conservancy. I can again emphasize that your membership to the Friends of Seven Dams Conservancy helps the committee to have the necessary funding to maintain as well as to protect the Conservancy. Our current membership fee for individual members is 240 Rand a month. The committee have asked me tonight to propose to the meeting that we're going to raise this, and I actually have to ask, can we raise this membership fee to 300 Rand a month? It was 240 Rand I think for the last 7 years, Joe, 8 years. So what we really need to do is we want to employ a full-time conservancy manager, or not full-time, a 5/8 post. We can't afford to have someone full-time there. But for that extra 60 rand that we're asking, we will be able to do it going forward. By raise of hands, does anybody object against our request of 300 rand annually, a year? Annually. Yeah. Everybody happy? Right. Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. You make my life easier. I appreciate that. Some feedback on the SDF. The SDF is a spatial development framework of the Mangaung Metro Municipality. You will remember last year, I've mentioned it, that we opposed the SDF because there was a certain western portion of the land that was indicated as developable. We have written a few letters. We had our input in the spatial development framework at Mangaung. I did receive feedback that it was amended, that the whole green space is now green on the SDF, as we call it, so it should not be developed. Unfortunately, before tonight, I haven't received written confirmation what I've requested, but we'll keep you guys posted. We'll keep our members posted, and if anything else, we will go back to the municipality and ask again for the amendment that we have already asked a few times. So we'll keep you in the loop with that as well. Then you will also remember last year we opposed, I think opposed is not the right word, but we opposed the development to the west, or certain portions that a developer wanted to develop. And last year, like I mentioned, we went to court. We won the battle, actually. We didn't win, we won it. The court said we won it. They took it back to Department of Economic and Environmental Affairs. Economic and Environmental Affairs did not amend their environmental approval that was granted to the developer. So we went back and opposed it again. And then in that same time, we started negotiations and said, but can't we agree, come to agreement with the developer outside the court? And it was quite intense, the pushback the whole time. And eventually, we did come to agreement. And I think we've also sent a circular out to all our members just to inform you what was the agreement. So the three main important things that we agreed upon with the developer is that to the northern side of his northeastern side, to our northwestern side of our conservancy, that there is a certain portion on that copy that he shouldn't develop. We've agreed upon that. The most important thing for us was that the developer will not install any services dissecting the conservancy. So that is also in a written agreement. And then the third thing is that we want the western fence be done, and we as the Conservancy will contribute towards that fence, because we are really pushing the last few years already just to get approval from the municipality that we can continue. Now we've got a neighbor on that side, so we have an agreement that we will contribute, but get that fence done. The agreement was signed, if I'm correct, so I think it was the 8th of March 2022, and the agreement is that the fence should be up within 18 months from that date. Now the fence haven't started yet, but I mean we're really 6 months down the line at the moment. So we're looking forward to get our western fence up. I think from our side it's a security thing. I think we will all be happy if it's closed up on that side and we know the 86 hectares is well protected within the fences. Then at the end of last year, we have had a small financial contribution towards the cleaning of the zoo. We supported the Parks Department in that regard. We still all hope, and I mean it's a bit of a far cry from what we are doing, but we thought it is a good initiative, and we really hope that the zoo can come back to where it was at least, or close to where it was. So we supported that cleaning campaign that they had on the end of last year. We have heard that they are still busy trying to get it back to where it was. We don't see it coming very soon, but we all really do. We hope it will. Then activities and rules. I think everybody's got their own reason why they use the Conservancy. I think walking is one of the most activity that's used the most. Walking with dogs, mountain biking, trail riding, trail running, and bird watching. And I just want to ask again tonight, and maybe I'm preaching for the people that's in the church, because of the people that's not in the church. It's the one thing that one of the requests that we get the most from the public using is obviously dogs. Most incidents happening in the Conservancy is because of dogs. We are dog friendly. We like to have the dogs there. Guys must walk the dogs. But all we ask is to have control over your dog when you are using the Conservancy. There's other people there. They don't know your dog. And maybe your dog is your little puppy, fluffy, but for someone else is like this huge bulldog. So please, people, be considerate towards other users. I can always emphasize that. I think that's the one thing that our board is being hampered with the most, is really just that. So if you may, please assist us with that. I think just on access control and security, you will know that we've got a gates with access codes. We've closed up the Conservancy and we're still busy, like I've mentioned, on a western fence. I mean, we really just want to keep it clean. The Conservancy is a place for all public to use. The main purpose of the gates, obviously, is we just want to know who is using the Conservancy, and therefore doesn't force people to be a member of us and contribute towards us if they don't want to. It's a public space, but we really want to encourage everybody to join the Friends to look after this space that we are really looking after. I just want to thank Wild Olive Estate Security, Steve Levy, who is here tonight, and also Jacob McCullough. You know, we've got on the Wild Olive side, we've got pan-tilt zoom cameras on, and these guys help us to monitor not right through. We unfortunately can't see over the Conservancy, but a huge part of the Conservancy is already covered by cameras. I think that also helps quite a lot on safety. And then I just want to make mention of again, and like I've mentioned last year, it's really a privilege for me to see female users, and a lot of you guys are doing it alone these days, walking in a Conservancy. It's really a huge privilege, and that's what I want to see every day. But remember, we are in South Africa. We are not in a safe haven as always. So we're really encouraged to at least be two together. But it is a privilege to see that. Fire protection. We have become a member of Mangaung Fire Protection Association this year. The group is established to assist private, public and farm owners in and around Mangaung to help with fire protection. They are an independent, also actually a non-profit company with a high focus on prevention and assistance where there is need. We also bought some fire equipment for ourselves which we put into the container, and we have it available when needed. We were fortunate this year had only one little fire caused by a spark of an unfortunate guinea fowl. But luckily that fire was set out in a matter of 20 to 30 minutes. And again, Wildlife Security helped us a great deal, and then also the Northern Suburbs Fire Prevention Group that was also part of us. Then myself and Mr. Heemstra, or Joe Heemstra, had interaction with Letty Fouchier, Mr. Alexander Jordan, and the Free State Residential Care Centre, Mr. Francois Prinsloo. The discussion was on the possibility of expanding the land, the Seven Dams Conservancy, to the north, land that their entities are the owners of, and that will end up until the Free State Botanical Gardens. Now we are really at the early stage at the moment, but we'll also keep you guys posted on proceedings and future developments on that side as well. I think just on quick, the information administration, I've mentioned it last year, we're using Google Drive, and I just can thank Tasha again for her work on all the administration done the past year. Much appreciate Tasha. Then I think the nice projects that happened the past year, I think you guys would have seen it. There was that new walkway constructed from General Beyers Gate with that stone and wooden poles, making the area better accessible during rain. We also installed that new balustrades when you enter General Beyers Gate on that culvert. And then we built that new wood bridge on the outlet of the Northern Dam to the right, which also make that part more accessible for everybody. I just want to thank our Director of Projects, Reander Botha, for all his hard work with that. Reander, well done. I think it is a very nice addition to our conservancy. Our website is still up and running, guys. Please visit it. I think there's a lot of information on there. I've mentioned it last time as well. www.sevendams.co.za. As I've also mentioned, is when you're in a conservancy, take a picture, put it on Facebook. Let us see what you experience within this conservancy. It's always nice for us to see and for other people as well. There's so much beauty and so much things to see there. So please like and share with everybody. Then we have we've appointed Environmental Management Group to compile a veld management plan for the Conservancy. They have just completed their field survey, and we are waiting the report from them. And that will include, and I think it will really connect to what Dr. van Aert is going to deal with tonight or present to us tonight as well. It's really about the invasive species that we have in the Conservancy. Unfortunately, our directors are not ecologists, so we don't know which plants and how. I think we can see which plants we want to remove, but I don't know if how do we remove them. So poison isn't always the answer, and so we await their guidance on how we're going to manage it going forward. Then the maintenance, we've got 2 employees, we still do. One full-time and then one twice a week, which is keeping the Conservancy clean for us, cutting the roads open, cutting the fire breaks open every year, cutting away the khaki balls. I think even that is nice to see. There's a lot less. I know the seedbed is still there, so we continue that annually as well and clean up the Conservancy going forward. and also looking to the veld management plan will also help us a lot in doing that. Then just to conclude from my side, we will continue to promote the Seven Dams Conservancy, including the conservation of it and of its natural habitat, and to make sure it's a pleasurable recreational experience for the visitors, and we will always try and maintain its aesthetic appearance. I've mentioned it, and you will see shortly, we will advertise the post of our conservancy manager that we are looking at. Please, if you know of someone as well, when we are advertising the post, please let us know. Then I just want to end off by thank the board of directors, each one contributing annually, some of the guys daily, weekly, monthly, all getting zero money for all the effort that's going into the conservancy. But I think without you guys, this meeting won't even exist tonight. So thank you very much. Johan Botha, Joe Imstra, Cornelie van der Berg, Tasha Eistedt, and Reander Botha. Unfortunately, Lelani Lemmer isn't here. She has resigned as a director from the board as well. If the directors just can stand up and just, we can give them just a nice hand, everybody. Johan, please. Thank you, Johan, thank you. That concludes my story of the year. I'm going over to the financial report now. Cornelie, if you will come and present the finances for us. Oh, you're already on the screen. Can I move this for you?
Doets. Ah. Can everybody hear me? Thank you, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's lovely to see you here this evening. You can see on the screen behind me, I'm just going to really highlight a few points. I do want to add, we do have the complete full financial statements. I think were they emailed, or they can be emailed. They are available digitally. So if you want to see the whole audited statement, just let me know and we'll send it to you. But so these financial statements then were prepared by Martelies Bester, and they are up until the year that ended on the 30th of June 2022. So in terms of our income then, it's mostly our membership fees or donations received then, 283,000 Rand 130. And I was looking at it today actually, and I thought I should just mention, as Emil said, our annual fees are 240, but sometimes people donate 250 or 270 or random amount, so that's why it's not a multiple of 240. Other expenses then really is our accounting fees, Martelies Bester, who prepares our statements, and then of course some bank charges, and we do have some administrative expenses, if you will. And then perhaps our largest expense every year is our for our two workers in this conservancy. As Emil also mentioned, they are responsible. One we have that works twice a week, and then James, he comes 5 days a week, and they are responsible to keep the lanes open, the paths open, and for the fire breaks and so on. Another major expense then, of course, always is our legal expenses. Almost 65,000 Rand that we spent on legal fees last year. But these will be... paybacks? Okay. All right, yeah, so we will recoup some of those expenses. And then another major expense then for us this year, 84,000 odd rands that we spent on maintenance and repairs. So that refers then to the walkways, that, what did you call the little thing there by the, when you come in, the balustrade, thank you very much, in the new bridge there on the northern side as well. So that all amounted to about 84,000 odd rands. We received some interest as well. We do have an investment, a 32-day notice investment at Nedbank. So we received some interest there as well. And then actually we also managed to make a little profit of just a little bit less than 30,000 rand in the bank this year. Any questions? Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. Wil jy iets sê? Yeah. Then just the other thing that I have to take care of this evening is the appointment of our accounting firm. So I just want to ask to the quorum today, are there any problems if we keep using Martha-Lies Bester, or is it okay if we continue making use of first service? I see a 1, another 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Cornelie, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that is brief and sweet, and the finances are in such good hands. It was just always so easy to work with her, and then obviously MRB and partners. They really assist us well in looking well after our finances. Then we go over to directors. Joe? Okay, now I call you to the front. Thank you.
Daar is hy. Is hy aan? Is hy aan? Kan julle hoor? Okay. Ja, dit is natuurlijk baie lekker. Van laas jaar af wat ons omskep is in 'n nuwe winsgewende maatskappy, is ek skielik 'n direkteur, nie net 'n komiteelid nie. So ons het vir onsself in die proses baie lekker nuwe status verwerf, ongelukkig nog steeds onbetaald. En ek dink miskien is dit daarom dat hulle daar nie besluit het om te bedank. Ons het op hierdie stadium, dames en here, 2 vakatures op ons bestuur vir nuwe direkteure. Ons het 'n bietjie, ons het geadverteer vir belangstellendes en ons het self 'n bietjie scouting gedoen, 'n bietjie, ek is nou nie seker wat die Afrikaans is, 'n bietjie headhunting. En ons het 'n paar goeie aansoeke gekry, waarvan ek vanaand graag 2 aan u wil voorlê vir goedkeuring. Die eerste is Shirley Highland. Sy is oorspronklik van Ficksburg. Ongelukkig kan sy nou nie vanaand hier wees nie, weens ander verpligtinge, wat ek van oordeel is daarom 'n baie goeie ander verpligting is. Sy het skool gegaan by Unisi, sy het studeer aan die Universiteit Vrystaat, regte studeer, het haar LLB verwerf as ook 'n LLM cum laude, en dan het sy ook 'n diploma in finansiële beplanning verwerf. Sy is van 2014 af verbonde aan die Universiteit van Vrystaat, eers as 'n dosent in handelsreg en tans as direkteur van ding wat ek nog nie tevore van gehoor het nie, Koffsie Pa Misa Academy, wat gemik is op voortgesette lewenslange verwerwing van kundigheid en kwalifikasies. Sy is die afgelope 4 jaar is sy 'n gereelde besoeker aan die Bavaria. Sy het prikkelende idees oor hoe om die Bavaria verder te verbeter en gemeenskapsbetrokkenheid uit te brei. En ons het haar ervaar as 'n dinamiese persoon. Ons is oortuig dat sy 'n baie positiewe bydrae op die bestuur kan lewer en 'n besliste impak sal kan maak. Sy is ook nog jonk genoeg en vol energie en entoesiasme te wees. So ek wil graag die ondersteuning hê in die eerste plek vir haar aanstelling en dan 'n tweede direkteur wat ek aan u wil voorhou is Lucian Kompani. Hy is ek gaan hierdie maar in Engels doen hoewel hy vlot Afrikaans is. He attended the University of Free State where he obtained also an LLB degree and LLM degrees cum laude. And he joined the Patswani Henny during a firm of attorneys during 2012 as a senior associate in the firm's labor and litigation department and was appointed as a co-director in 2013. At present, director at Patswani Henny Attorneys and head of the dispute resolution practice group. He also specializes in commercial litigation, public law, en construction law. Nou, as u in gedagte hou wat Emil al gesê het, ons interaksie met die munisipaliteit, dan dink ek kan u self besef reeds watter waarde hy vir ons op die bestuur sal kan hê. Prior to joining the present firm, he was also a partner at Loefius Block Attorneys. He commenced his legal career there in 2005 and he thus has some 17 years of practical legal experience. Ek dink dit is 'n waardevolle moontlike toevoeging tot ons geleedere. He also served on various legal committees, was also a part-time lecturer at the University of Free State, and he still presents lectures at the Practical School for Legal Training. Ek dink dit is twee persone wat ons baie graag op ons komitee of op ons raad van direkteure sou wou verwelkom, maar ons kan dit nie doen sonder u ondersteuning nie. So kan ek vir u vra net, is daar enige besware teen die aanstelling van Shirley Hyland in die eerste plek? U tevrede? En dan Lucian Kompani. Ek weet nie, Lucian, spreek ek die van reg uit, is die klem op die regte plek? Lucian, ek sien ook nie enige besware nie, so kan ek dan in Shirley se afwesigheid vir haar sê, dan baie geluk, dan is sy van vanaand af 'n mede-direkteur, en so ook vir jou, Lucian, baie dankie vir jou bereidwilligheid. Ons sien uit om met jou saam te werk, of jy saam met ons, of wederzijds. Lucian, as jy miskien net kan opstaan, dat die mense net kan sien met wie hulle te doen het. Daar sê, ek dink dit handel my stukkie van vanaand af, baie dankie.
Joe, baie dankie. So in terme van ons MOI, in terms of our Memorandum of Incorporation, we have 7 directors. So we are a full board of directors now again. And Johanna is actually now our 8th director. Johanna is also a full director, but he have requested me to start with a process and relieve him because he have done his part in the Conservancy. And if I say tonight, I'm not going to thank Johan because he's not going away. He's still an additional director to the board, so he'll be our 8th director. But if I can say tonight, I just want to thank him personally for all the years and all the hard work that he have done up to date, many years. Johan, I don't know, from what time were you involved with Dams Conservancy? It's about 20 years. I'm sure it was about 20 years to date. So there's one guy I just want to maybe especially thank tonight, Johannes, for all your work over the years for the Conservancy. Like Joe have mentioned, he's the one guy who really put his hand in the soil and clean it up properly. Thanks, Johan. Much appreciate that. Then before I close the meeting, I'm going to allow for a few questions from you. Please, any questions? I think the question was, when we dealt with the finances, are we going to have a lot of legal expenses this year coming? Hopefully not. We haven't got any legal things going at the moment, but we always have a legal fund available if needed. So, but at the moment, luckily, we don't foresee huge amount of legal expenses, except for the money that we actually, the court have ruled that they have to pay us back. So hopefully we can receive that back. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. I'm quickly going to go back to the... Are you talking about this little portion at the bottom? Yeah, just next to the circle. That's private land. As far as I know, it is zoned commercial, so it can be developed in future. Unfortunately, I think that fight is long gone. I think the developer of the Seven Dams retirement resort, it was part of the land that they have established, I think way back in 2000 already. And that portion of land now belongs to someone that you've sold it to. No, I'm not going to comment further, maybe I don't. But unfortunately, no, we can't do anything about it. It's not our land, it's not in our hands, it's privately owned land, yeah. Anything else? Yes. That's right. Dis funny onderaf. Julle sal sien hierdie rooi gedeelte net links van daai swart lyn. Dis die deel waar die ontwikkelaar tans werk op die stadium. Ons ooreenkoms trek eintlik van die rooi lyntjie af heeltemal op, maar obviously die onderste deel gaan ons ook toemaak. So dis die hele westelike grens van suid tot noord wat nou toegemaak gaan word. Ja. Anything else? Lenovo Construction. Yeah, they are developing on the west there. Yes. Anything else? Nothing? Everybody happy? Thank you. Right, then it's my privilege to call the meeting then formally closed. And, sorry, ja, daar was nog een vraag. Ja, is welkom. Baie dankie. Baie dankie. Baie dankie. En dan ons sluit die vergadering dan formeel. En dan gaan ons eintlik oor na die lekker gedeelte. Julle hoef nie meer na my stem te luister vir die res van die aand nie. Kan ek voorstel Dr. van Aert, Dr. Andri van Aert, sy is by die universiteit van die Vrystaat. En sy gaan baie spesifiek bietjie met ons kom deel oor invasive plants in Seven Dams Conservancy. Dr. van Aert, baie dankie. Dankie vir jou tyd. Ons luister graag.
Kan almal my hoor? Ek voel soos 'n rockstar, soos hulle sê. So al die tools vir 'n mens bring. Okay, so Emmanuel, hulle het my gevra om 'n praatjie te kom lewer oor die indringerplante. En hulle het gevra ek moet ook bietjie kyk na die breër bloemfontein. Maar toe ons nou gaan ondersoek instel, toe besef ek, gaan nie tyd wees om die Breër Bloemfontein te bespreek nie, so ons gaan maar net fokus op die bewaararea self. So, my praatjie is in Engels, so as julle iets wil weet in Afrikaans, moet julle maar vra. Okay, so invasive species are species that have been imported from somewhere else, and since 1947, they are controlled by law. So if you want to import a plant from another country, you need an import permit. These species include their propagules, so all the seeds and the vegetative parts that they use for reproduction. That's not native in the area, and that occurs or can cause harm to the native species in the natural environment, result in economic damage or injury to human health. So even natural species that do occur in South Africa can become invasive. So there's a difference between invasive species and alien invasives. So these invasives can be native, meaning belonging to South Africa, or non-native, incoming from another country, which then heavily colonizes a specific area. So if we look at alien invasive plants, these plants come from foreign countries and were usually introduced for good intentions. Most of the Europeans that came here wanted to bring the food sources with them, so they brought those plants along because they did not know which plants that they could use for food sources here in Africa or the southern tip of Africa. These plants have the ability to crowd out the indigenous vegetation in sometimes a very aggressive manner, and there are some aggressive ones in the Conservancy, and they then affect the land, and once they have affected the land, it's not easily rehabilitated. So if we look at alien invasive plants, which are exotics, not from South Africa, mostly from foreign origin, that invade previously pristine areas, so they come into any environment. It's not that they invade specific environments. These alien plants are seen as one of, or the fifth biggest threat to our environment, because they distribute themselves among our indigenous plants. So they don't need the help of humans, they do it themselves. 69% of all the invaders that do occur in South Africa, however, comes from South America or Australia, because they have similar ecologies to South Africa, similar temperatures, similar environmental conditions. And then they are seriously threatening our indigenous ecology, our biodiversity, and then also the productivity of our land. So this might all just be boring information, but I need to put the bigger picture so that you guys can understand where we're heading. So why are these invaders successful in these new environments? They compete with other plants for water, sun, and sunlight, and most of the times they can compete very successfully because they quickly can adapt to this new environment in which they are established. They also then compete with our plants, and those competitions then is dependent on whether the natural resources that are available they can utilize and how successful they are in utilizing these natural resources. Invaders usually disturb the balance of the ecology or the balance of that specific environment, and then they can take over the plant population, replace all the indigenous vegetation, and in the end you will end up with a homogeneous stand of only one specific alien invasive that will be present in that area. I don't know whom of you have heard about the pom-pom weed that has been a big problem in the grasslands of the Free State especially, where this plant then emits allelopathic or has allelopathic properties. So it emits chemicals into the soil that prevents other plants from growing around it. So in the end, you will only have that specific stand of plants occurring. And if you drive on the N1 towards Joburg, you will normally see patches of pink flowers in the grassland, and that are those pom-pom weeds. So these invaders that comes from other countries can grow in disturbed areas as well as in undisturbed areas. That's why I say they don't favor certain environments above others. And they are successful in these new environments that they are introduced to because there are no natural competitors for them or no natural enemies. So the insects and animals that eat them and feed on them and are pests for them do not come with when they come from the foreign countries. Sometimes they can better establish in these deteriorating environments than our own plants, and they grow more aggressively and also reproduce much more aggressively than our own indigenous species. So how do we control these invasive plants? So there's a combination of methods that are usually used, and the follow-up after having controlled them, or you think you have controlled them, follow-up is very, very important. So the aim of controlling alien invasives is most of the time to have these plants of concern moved out of the environment where you don't want them anymore. You don't want them to grow there anymore. Do not make seeds or spores or any copuses have the ability to resprout or reproduce using suckers or any vegetative propagules. And then once you want to eradicate these aliens, you must also look after the environment, because in the process of eradication, you can also cause damage to the environment. So that damage needs to be limited, especially protect the soil and then enhance the environmental conditions for the native vegetation. So if we look at these control methods and have to decide which one we will use, we need to look at the size of the plants, what age they are their ability to reproduce, the type of environment in which they grow, the season in which they flower or in which they actively grow, and also the availability of labor. At the Conservancy, I came across a lot of the cacti that has just been pushed over, which is even creating a bigger problem, because those cacti just form new roots and start regrowing. So you're just spreading them, you're not actually eradicating them. So the first type of control is chemical control. This is not always possible because we have to be very selective when we choose these chemical controls, because they must only affect the targeted species. Once we apply chemicals, it can also affect the plants in the vicinity of the aliens. So these chemicals are also very strictly controlled by law, so there's a lot of research that goes into developing these chemicals, making sure that it reaches the target species and only affect those species. Then it must be tested and registered for a specific plant. So if you have a plant that you want to combat using chemicals, you will most of the time go to your guy that sells your chemicals and tell him, this is the plant that I want to eradicate, and then he will prescribe a certain chemical with a certain active ingredient. So the active ingredients in this case is then very important. So these herbicides, there's a wide range of them on the market, and some of them are very sophisticated. However, they also sell under a wide range of names. So it's important to know what the active ingredient of the chemical is. So once you know the active ingredient, then you can buy any chemical with different names, but that contains the same active ingredient. Then we can do mechanical control. This is where you go in and you pull them out by hand or dig them out by shovel. In the case of trees, we can ring bark them, so we will then create a gap between the xylem and the phloem of the plant, so that the plant cannot transport the water and the nutrients that comes from the soil towards the leaf. So you would take the bark off, and then also cutting the trees close to the ground or below the ground, or then add chemicals to the stumps of these trees or burn them. Biological control, I think this is something that we all want to work because it seems to be the easiest, where people would then bring host-specific enemies from the country of origin where these alien invasive species come from to reduce the invasiveness of these plants. And then this whole process of developing this biological control is done under the supervision of academic or research institutions in order to see that everything that's done is within legislation about how this happens in the environment. So they will then test these natural enemies, usually under quarantine, to make sure that there's no damage to other plants in the environment or crops. And then in terms of, if we look at the world, in 1937, cochineal was proven to combat Opuntia vulgaris. But not all of these biological control agents that scientists try to develop or these research institutions are successful. So there's a lot of the programs where they start something and think that they might have a biological control agent, but in the end it's not working at all. So if we look into South Africa specifically, here we have for the pines and the black wattles, we have agents that have proven to be successful in preventing them from spreading. It does not prevent their growth, but there's no seeds that form that can establish the next generation. Then we also have weevils that attack the seeds to prevent the seedlings from spreading. And then our biggest problem in South Africa, the Australian acacias, we have these gull-forming wasps that lay their eggs on the flowers of the acacias, and then they form these gulls, which means that seed cannot produce, so those plants cannot reproduce through seeds. Then for bugweed, we have the Brazilian lacebug that is also very effective. However, the success rate of these biological control agents is not very good, only an 8% success rate, which is relatively low in terms of combating aliens. So now, why is it important that we get rid of these aliens? What do they do to our natural environment in terms of, if we focus on land, we call it the terrestrial environment. So it results in the decline of species diversity. So species diversity is something that measures the health of your ecosystem. There's lots of different plants that occur in different environments, and they then compose the diversity. So you don't want a monospecific stand where you only have one species of alien dominating a large area. They can also result in the changes in our animals because our animals are not adapted to feed on these invasive species. And then especially if we go down to the fynbos, which is very vulnerable, we think of Hakia, the different wattle species, and the pines, which grow there, which can then result in the total extinction of these indigenous species. It results in ecological imbalances, which then increase the risk of catastrophic events happening in the environment. Again, the pines and the wattles down in the fynbos provides a lot of biomass. They create fires that burn with more heat, so they affect the fynbos negatively, and that can then also be applicable to other environments where they occur. And then, as I said, the fires, so they increase fire hazards because they are more flammable. They contain all the oils, like if you think about the eucalyptus, flammable oils, and then also the biomass that they create in terms of fuel for burning. They can prevent access, so sometimes you will have, I think especially about the brambles, where you have thorny and spiny aliens that will create barriers which you can't cross or your animals cannot cross. They can decrease the productivity of the land because they are unpalatable, and some of them are really poisonous to the animals, so they can result in death of your livestock. Reduction in the value of your land. So it costs a lot more to clear out a certain area from aliens than to just keep them out from the initial beginning. And then also it has an effect on conservation and tourism, because people don't want to go to an area and have their view obstructed by these non-native alien invasive species. They also play a role in soil erosion, the siltation of our dams and the rivers. Once the rivers are in flood and you have a lot of these aliens growing along the river corridors, they do not have deep root systems, so they get uprooted very easily and then get washed downstream. And most of the time, these alien invasive species will also occur along the rivers in areas that we call riparian areas, so it's the corridors of the rivers. And then they play a big role in the depletion of our water resources, which in South Africa, being a water-scarce country, is really a big problem because the wattles and the gums really use much more water than our indigenous vegetation through the process of evapotranspiration. And then, of course, for agriculture, they are also a problem, having influenced the yield of the crops that the farmers then use. Then we go from the terrestrial or land environment into the water, the aquatic environment. So here these plants really play a big role in oxygen deficiency, not only because they grow on top of the water and use up the oxygen. Once they die inside the water, they also need to be decayed. And that process of decaying is also using a lot of oxygen. So in that way, a lot of oxygen is consumed, and then it's affecting the smell and the taste of the water. They also create these dense floating mats. If you can just think about the Hartbeespoort Dam and how it's invaded by the water hyacinth, it has the ability to block pumps and prevent access to boats, and then people cannot make use of that recreational activity of enjoying a water body close by. These plants in aquatic environments can also be breeding sites for mosquitoes and snails, which then result in disease-carrying pathogens for us as humans. And then if we again think about Hartbeespoort Dam to cows or cattle, it seems as green vegetation that they could walk on, and then they can fall in and drown because these mats then form solid vegetation masses to them. And then also it prevents access to sunlight, so all of the organisms that grow within the water body do not have access to sunlight, so that then also affects the biodiversity in that environment. So what are the impacts generally on our environment? We've spoken about biodiversity, and we said that they are affecting our water resources, providing fire, more fuel and flammability to fire, soil erosion because of the shallow roots of these plants, and then also if we go down to the coast, the sand dunes that are covered by the black wattles and those are then having a different effect on the environment, because in that case they keep the sand from blowing away, so the sand dunes cannot move as they should, so in that way they also affect the ecology. In agriculture, we've said that they have an influence on the productivity. Poisoning of livestock, I think, is really big problems. I have encountered farmers that along river courses have lost livestock because of alien invasive species. And then also human health, and for the animals, it can result in death and injury. And then for forestry, a reduction in the growth and productivity of the plants that do occur in the forests. And then for recreation, especially access to water bodies for boating and fishing. And then tourism, the beauty of nature that is being affected by these alien invasive species. So in South Africa, just some general ecological background, we have some of the best environmental laws in the world, but we do not enforce them. Okay. So for alien invasive plants, there's 2 acts that come into play. The Conservation of Agricultural Resources Act, where once the Minister of Agriculture has declared a plant a weed, then or an invader, then it comes onto that list, and then it is divided into specific categories, which tells you how to deal with it. Then we also have the NEMBA, which is the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act, which in 2020 has identified 379 plants in various categories of invasion. So depending on which act you use when you study these plants, you will determine in which categories they fall, and that will then determine how you should deal with them in the environment. So for 7 dams, I've worked with the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act, and there they have 4 different categories for these plants. 1A means that it requires immediate compulsory control. Luckily to us, 7 dams have none of these. Then we have a 1B, which must be controlled or eradicated where possible. 7 dams have quite a lot of these. Number 2, allowed only in specific areas under controlled conditions. There's 1 or 2. And number 3, must be controlled within riparian areas, there where we have water flowing through, and no further cultivation of these species are allowed. So I have divided the aliens that I found at 7 dams into the different categories so that we know what we need to do with them. Okay, in category 1B, so these that needs to be eradicated if possible, is Cortadeira leone, which is growing in a watercourse. It's a robust tassel grass, and it mostly appears white when it's old, and this photograph is actually coming from 7 dams itself, so that I don't get accused of lying about the plants that's occurring there. Okay, so it's also irritant to the respiratory tract of humans. It has abrasive leaves that can affect your skin really bad. And then it has a fire hazard, and always alien invasive species affect the biodiversity of the environment. Penicitum cladestimum, or the common kikuyu grass, mat-forming grass, also found close to the dam there in the north, mostly creeping with its rhizomes or its stolons, and it's known to be alien invasive around especially wetlands. And if it occurs around wetlands or in protected areas, it needs to be eradicated. The Chesnea indica, which is the wild strawberry or the false strawberry. Mat forming, this is mostly occurring here close to the General Beyers entrance. So yesterday we had to do a little bit of a search in the waterways. So most of the time the aliens are occurring in these watercourses or along the watercourses. What is very distinctive is the red fleshy berry that you can see. Laser? No laser? Okay, the red fleshy berry. And again, it is mostly invasive of moist areas. So water to all these aliens are important. Argemone, or the Mexican papaver. So in this case, for this species, there's two varieties. The one has a flower that's creamy or pale yellow, like in this case. And then the other one has a very bright yellow flower. So there's two different species. Luckily, the bright yellow flower is not found at Seven Dams. All parts of this plant is poisonous, and then the spines and the sap then can also irritate your skin. Cirsium vulgare, also known as the Scottish thistle, stems with spines. The flowers are this pinkish, mostly invades grasslands, not that fond of wet areas, but can also occur close to wet areas. Irritates the skin, can cause dermatitis in humans, and also cause physical injuries to animals. Solanum elecnifolium, or the Satansbos. Yes, stem covered with white silvery hairs. Often the leaves are wavy and then also bent upwards, and then the young fruits and the leaves of this plant is poisonous to animals when consumed. Xanthium stremarium is also something that I've encountered regularly along river courses. The kankerroos in Afrikaans. It's quite descriptive of the irritation that this plant provides to you once you encounter it in the field. It really sticks to your clothes and is difficult to get off of you. So the fruits are then covered with these straight thorns, and there you can see at the bottom are some dried ones. So there were no nice fruits for me to photograph when I was there yesterday. So I just brought those along. But the plants that you see there at the top, those are the size that they are currently at Seven Dams. So the seedlings and the seeds are poisonous, and then they can also irritate your skin. Mirabilis jalapa, I would like to say that this is a garden escapee, if I can call them that. Shrubs are mostly hairless. The flowers can be either pink, yellow, white, or variegated. It is a potential transformer, meaning if it finds an environment favorable for it to grow, it can quite invade the environment and take over. So it has the potential to grow throughout Seven Dams and then also affect the biodiversity. Verbena bonariensis, there's already large monospecific stands of it, like in the bottom photograph. Very distinctive of this plant is its four-angled stem, and then the leaves that are stem clasping. It can also be a transformer and then also affect biodiversity. I think the photographs to you guys is what's more interesting than whatever is written next to it. Then, being a scientist, this name, Arjuia cericifera. I'm not going to say I'm wrong, I'm not going to say I'm right. We'll go with the moth catcher, it's easier. Climbing plant, the flowers are white or cream, And then the fruit is very spongy. In this case, it has hardened because it's an old fruit. The whole plant is poisonous because it contains milky latex. And then it also has the potential to transform and then also affects biodiversity. Cuscuta campestris, or common dodder as we know it, I don't think I have to explain it. You know it, it grows there. It affects biodiversity and then also can become a problem in agriculture. Ipomua purpurea, or a basis annual twiner, so also a plant that climbs on top of other vegetation, can also affect agriculture and biodiversity. Unfortunately, this flower is not found in 7 dams yet, maybe somewhere in future, but not yet. Only the bottom plant was found there. Then Gleditsia triacanthus, again restricted to the watercourse. Very distinctive is this 3-branched spines that you can see in the top photograph. That is a very young individual that we've encountered. The one with the pods are much bigger. So also a potential transformer of habitats, affect the biodiversity. And here's where the problem lies. It can affect our water resources. So these plants all play a part in the water resources. Then all of the cacti, Opuntia hemifissa, very prominent for the big yellow flower that it has with the orange or red in the middle. Can also transform environments and affect biodiversity and recreation, and it invades mostly dry grasslands. And there's quite a few of these cacti found all over the Conservancy. Opuntia engelmanni, also a very small cactus. This one has very distinctive thorns. So in the case of the cacti, most of them are distinguished on species level depending on the thorns that they have, or the spines. So the spines is modified leaves. So the actual green leaf that you see is actually a stem. Okay. So in this case, 1 to 3 or 1 to 6 spines that occur on the stem that makes it very distinctive. It can transform habitats as well. Biological control has been applied to this plant. However, it is very negligible because it's only successful in certain varieties of this specific species. Opuntia ficus indica, that's the big one that looks like a tree, up to 5 meters high. The other day I was very kind of upset when one of the farmers that I encountered told me, no, but he's now planting these cacti in cultivated land. He's like planting hectares and hectares of it. Luckily, it's the spineless one, which is not listed as an invasive according to the National Environmental Management Biodiversity Act. So I asked him, what are you doing with it? He's like, no, they plant them, and once they are big, they cut off the stems, the green stems, cut them off, and then they add cow manure to it in order for gas to be produced. And then they use the gas that is being produced as biogas and put it into the gas bottles that you and I use, and in that way we have green energy. So they also affect biodiversity and have the ability to transform habitats. Then another scientific Trichocereus species, the torch cactus, which makes beautiful white flowers. I would also say that this one is a garden escapee, and I think around the edges of 7 dams, especially where there's houses, there's quite a lot of plants that have escaped from gardens that we need to look into. They can also transform habitats and of course have an effect on biodiversity and recreation. Pyracantha angustifolia, definitely a garden escapee, with its very nice spines there in the top photograph. At the end of the flowers, you can see the spines. The seeds are poisonous and they can transform habitats, affect biodiversity, and of course also found near one of the water sources or the water courses, so they affect our water resources. Sestrum parkway, I think we often, as scientists, make the mistake to wrongly identify Sestrum parkway as Sestrum lavigatum, which is the common inkberry, but yeah, the inkberry comes from the black berries that they do have, black or purple berries. So they are lethally toxic to cattle and sheep, and that is true. They also occur along the Modder River, where a farmer has lost quite a lot of cattle because the cattle have consumed these during drought years. They are spread all over Bloemfontein, not very easy to find because they most of the time grow underneath other trees, so they are not that visible and obvious for us to see. They can transform habitats and then of course also affect biodiversity and recreation. Cotoneaster franchetti, also in my opinion a garden escapee, also found in 7 Dams there by the poplar forest, if I can call it that. Orange fruits, that is poisonous if you consume a lot of it. It can transform the environment, or it has the potential to transform the environment and also affects biodiversity. There's another species of Cotoneaster also found at 7 Dams. This one is not hairy, so you can clearly see on the bottom photograph that there's no hairs on the leaves like in the previous one. The fruits are also poisonous if you consume large quantities, and it can also affect biodiversity. Then we have a species that can either be a category 1B or a category 2, and that is determined in terms of in which environment the species are growing. Does it grow close to a river? Does it grow in an open grassland? So that determines in which category that species falls. So here we have eucalyptus. So I would say once the eucalypt is growing close to a river, it would be a category 1B, which needs immediate eradication. So they are mostly cultivated, invades along the watercourses. They can transform the habitats, affect biodiversity and recreation. They are a fire hazard because of the volatile chemicals inside the leaves, and then they also use a lot more water than our natural vegetation, so they are threatening our water resources. In terms of category 2, we have Populus alba, which is then the poplar forest there, also close by one of the dams, mostly invading riverbanks, flays and dongas. It can transform habitats, it has a fire danger, it can affect biodiversity, and again, it's a threat to water resources. Then a plant that can either be a category 1B or a category 3, depending on where in the environment it grows. And I think we all know this one for its nice smell once the flowers are starting. So Melia azederach, or the syringa. The ripe fruits are toxic to animals and can be lethal. The lilac flowers is very distinctive. I think I only found one specimen inside the conservancy, so there's only one. Can transform habitats, affect the biodiversity, water resources, and then obviously recreation. Category 3, the Acer species, Acer gundo. This is characteristics is the fruits that are winged nutlets. The seeds are toxic, especially to horses. They also have the potential to transform habitats, affect biodiversity, and then also have an influence on our water resources. Fraxinus, this one grows at the gate, also with a winged fruit, but in this case the winged fruit are not split like in the Acer's case. It can also potentially transform habitats, affect biodiversity, and also our water resources. Then there's some species that are listed as invasive plants but do not have a category in NEMBA. So it's not a 1A, 1B, 2 or 3, but they have the ability to affect the environment. So I thought that maybe they are also worth mentioning. We are close to the end. I'm not going to bore you the whole evening with my scientific talks. Bromus, which is a grass that often grows in shaded areas. It poses quite a fire hazard. It can be irritated to the skin, and it can also affect biodiversity and recreation. Then there's 3 Unothera species that we encountered at 7 Dams. So the pink one would be the Unothera rosea. The white one would be Unothera lindheimeri, which again I think is more of a garden SKP. And then Unothera stricta is the yellow one. So in my point of view, you will maybe get it from your report, Unothera rosea is becoming a problem there close to the gate because it kind of grows everywhere there. So maybe that's something to look into. They are annual, biannual and perennial plants. So just also, they have nice flowers, so it's also nice to photograph them. Agave americana, close to that western area where you want to erect the fence. Evergreen shrub, the leaves are bluish grey with the toothed margins. They are weakly invasive, so not something that necessarily needs to be worried about, but maybe just have a look that so they don't become more extensive. They can also affect biodiversity. Salix babylonica, all of us want these nice trees along the rivers and watercourses. We do have an indigenous one, which I'll show you now. So this tree also invades watercourses and the branches are hanging almost to the ground, affecting biodiversity, have the ability to transform habitats, and then also a threat to our water resources because they grow in the water. Populus deltoides, also growing close to the water, invades riverbanks and marshes, has the potential to transform these habitats, can be a fire risk, affect biodiversity, and then also water resources. And then lastly, you might think, okay, but how can I contribute to this alien invasive situation that we are in? Know how to identify these alien invasive species. And now you're going to ask me, but how do you spot them? They don't fit into the picture that you see in front of you. That's most of the time how we identify them. Familiarize yourself with the legislation regarding these species and what the implications are if you want to eradicate them. Are they just declared weeds or are they declared invasive aliens? Know and keep your own land clear of invasives. Don't go to the nursery and buy all the latest invasive, nice flowering plants and plant them in your garden. Try to keep your garden indigenous. Tell your family and friends about this problem because not a lot of people that live in everyday society know about this problem of alien invasive species. And also tell them the threats that these species pose to our natural environment. Do not buy those at nurseries. I've said about that. If you want to clear them, acquire professional knowledge or professional advice. Do not bring foreign plants from foreign countries. And I even want to go as far as saying, don't bring plants from other provinces to the Free State, please. We don't want them here. And then respect quarantine requirements where it is applicable. And then the photograph at the top. Okay, so that side, your left side, is the indigenous Salix micronata, and then on your right-hand side is the invasive Salix babylonica. So both of them grow at 7 Dams. That's my story. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. I know, and it also grows the most easily. But yeah, try and restrict it to your garden.
I think everybody is happy. Yes.
Because the people of the nursery don't worry. If they can sell it, then they can sell it. There is some nurseries that, however, would recommend more native species, like rather plant me or I'm water-wise, but in that case, they do not always give preference to the indigenous species. Gardening is actually all about invasives because you don't want to plant the indigenous ones, they don't have nice flowers.
Thank you. Dr. Henry, thank you very much. I think a big thing for us is to see what we need to do. So Johan, you can't retire now. There's still work in the Conservancy. There's a lot of things that we have to take out. And that's why we have actually asked for a management plan, but I think this is so informative what you've done tonight as well to see this, because we don't know, like you say, not even in nursery always know what we are doing, yes. So it is very nice. Thank you very, very much. Joe, will you just present Dr. van Aert with just a little gift of appreciation from our side. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah. Thank you. That closes everything for tonight. Please come and enjoy some refreshments at the back. I'm looking forward to meet you all at the back. Have a coffee, have a cool drink or a wine and a little bread. Thank you for attending. Dankie julle almal baie dankie dat julle hier was. Waardeer dit baie.